All right, so we're back here again to kind of talk about our continuing age discussion. So when we think about age, right, when we think about the kinds of crimes, right, typically and historically, this has focused things on like burglary, larceny, murder, theft, larceny, motor vehicle theft, sexual assault, and so on. And so a couple interesting things about this, right, is that this is a somewhat limited view of crime because there's a lot more incident of crime than is recorded by these. So these are some of the UCR crimes. So it's a somewhat limited view of crime. Remember when I said we weren't going to go back to that orange and we just went back to it? God bless it. How on earth did we do that? We'll go to that color. Crime. So this is something that's often called street crime. Right? And what we end up finding, right, is that these younger people are most likely to offend at this age. And at the same time, they are most likely to be victimized as well. So when we think about like victimization, right? So not only are these people most likely to be offenders at this age group, they're most likely to be victimized at the same age. And so again, this represents another why. Why is that the case, right? Because it certainly doesn't have to be. And again, that these patterns do not have to exist. There's no like law of nature that this is the way it is, right? Like it's not something that is set down in some guidebook, rule book. It's not. This is not like a hard science, like property of gravity or something like this. But patterns do not have to exist. But yet it does, right? And so this is the kind of thing that's really interesting, is then like how can we provide an explanation for this pattern, right? When we know it is something that does not have to exist. So related to this, though, is a different question, though. Does this apply to all crimes? Right? And if we think about like this kind of question, right? If we think about what's going on with this, we would think like, yeah, like this age thing is pretty, appears to, apply to fights, it applies to murder, it applies to sexual assault. I mean, it applies to all this kind of stuff, right? Yeah, but there's something interesting that happens, right? Is that this is more of like an addendum to kind of a thought, right? Is that this is like the standard curve, right? Comes out here, right? But if we change our perspective, right? So if we have a delta change in perspective, and we thought about maybe, let's say if I told you that the curve looked more like that, right? Well, what would be in this curve, right? So this is our street crime curve. And, so this is, I don't know, this is 10 and this is 70. And I told you this is set like 10 and this is 70, but I told you like this was like 40 and 50. Why that curve, right? Because again, it doesn't have to be that way. Like why on earth would this like offend in such a manner in that particular way? So the big question then is, is that this is similar to something for like white collar crime. So when you think about like white collar crime acting in this way, right? You know, why does white collar crime have this occur? Why this shape? Have this shape? Why is that? And so another way to kind of think about this, right, is that when we start thinking about age and we think about it as a criminal, like, you know, what kind of patterns exist from like this kind of behavior then, is why does it change for certain crimes and can a theory then predict different ages of onset, desistance, and so on? So how can a theory explain the age curve? So how does the theory explain the age crime curve across crime types? So something to chew on like a little bit, right? And maybe this is something again that you guys can explore yourselves a little bit. But I think we'll kind of wrap this one up right here, and then we'll kind of move on and talk about our next little correlates. So I'll see you guys then.